I like it when a TV show gets to go out on its own terms. You know, gets that final season to close the plots and to really progress towards where it wants to resolve. And that happened with Chuck, whose last episode aired, I think, a week or two. It was a while ago. My wife and I have left the last episode of Chuck on our DVR, just waiting to watch it, like not wanting to admit it was over. We've enjoyed this show so much. But we finally got around to watching it, and I wanted to comment on the show as a whole and kind of gauge its place in shows and how well they did, especially with this final season. Chuck is the story of a computer nerd who, because of his roommate being a spy, ends up with knowledge of all these spy things in his brain through what's called the intersect, and how the spy community comes around him to try to protect him and try to train him. And it's about his progression from being this bumbling nerd to actually embracing himself as a spy and learning these things. It's also the story of how he fell in love with the woman who was sent to handle him, who was sent to take care of him and protect him and control him as he had all this stuff in his head. And it was really good. I mean, there's ups and downs to every show, but I think they did a great job with Chuck of tying up the loose ends. You could tell really early on in this season it was going to be about Chuck and Sarah, who's the love interest, and about that relationship and what that looks like, and that a lot of the romance was going to be part of how this show finished off. And you know what? I don't have a problem with that. Really not at all. I love seeing people with good chemistry portray a couple that loves each other and is willing to commit to each other, and what that looks like on screen. And I was actually really impressed with the way they plotted through that. There was a little plot device they used, which I think I can say, because it's not like a spoiler with television, unless you're like me and are waiting, but a little plot device about Sarah's memory, and she lost all of her memory of who Chuck was and what their relationship was, what their marriage was, because they're married now in the show. That happened throughout the course of the show, and to try to rediscover that and figure out what that means, I felt was a really interesting way to kind of to close out their relationship, and really added to a pretty emotional ending scene between Chuck and Sarah. I was really impressed. Now, the thing I've always loved about Chuck, more than the romance story, soap opera-y part of it, are the characters around the edges who are just so much fun to watch. And I've really enjoyed seeing Morgan Grimes kind of come into his own, seeing Adam Baldwin play this Casey character who has this rough exterior, and how his relationship with his daughter has progressed. If you would have told me after the first few episodes of Chuck that I would be so invested with the relationships of these characters on this silly little spy show, because it has been a silly little show. It never took itself too seriously. It always knew what it was. It was always willing to embrace not only the humor of that aspect, but also the whole Subway advertising thing. It always knew what it was. It never pretended to be more important than it actually was. And this silly little show, if you would have told me, would have affected me this deeply about these characters and the relationship, I probably would have laughed at you a little bit, but that's what happened. And I found myself in these final episodes rooting for all these people and just enjoying those final moments with them. And really, from a TV show, what more can you ask for?